What is unfolding now did not appear suddenly, and it cannot be explained as a single moment of tension or a passing dispute. The situation facing the Catholic Church today is the result of a long and complicated process that has been developing for decades. Over time, layers of disagreement, uncertainty, and differing interpretations have gradually built upon one another. Some of these fractures are obvious and openly discussed, while others remain quieter, expressed through subtle changes in practice or language. Together they form a picture of a church that has slowly discovered divisions within itself. At the center of this moment stands Pope Leo XIV. He did not create the conditions that produced the current tensions, but he now carries the responsibility of guiding the Church through them. The challenges before him are not simple administrative matters. They involve questions about unity, doctrine, authority, and the way the Church understands its own identity. To understand how the Church arrived here, it is necessary to look back several decades, to the conclusion of the Second Vatican Council in 1965. That council was one of the most significant events in modern Catholic history. For many Catholics it represented a time of renewal and hope. They believed the Church had opened a new chapter, one that allowed it to engage more directly with the modern world. Others, however, saw the same moment differently. For them, the Council introduced uncertainty. They feared that the changes it encouraged could lead to confusion about long-standing teachings and traditions. In the years immediately following the Council, these different interpretations began to take shape. Priests, theologians, and bishops debated what the Council documents truly meant and how they should be applied in practice. Within 5 years, a priestly society known as the Priestly Fraternity of St. Pius X was founded in 1970. The fraternity emerged from concerns that some of the post-conciliar reforms were moving too far away from the Church's established traditions. If you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos like this, because what you're about to hear is not just news, it's a wake-up call for every heart that still believes truth should burn brighter than silence. Now grab your rosary, quiet your spirit, and let your heart listen, not just with ears, but with faith. At first there was no formal break between the fraternity and Rome. The tensions were real, but they remained within the structures of the Church. Over time, however, disagreements deepened. The decisive moment came in 1988 during the pontificate of St. John Paul II. That year, bishops were consecrated without papal approval. In the Catholic Church, such consecrations require a mandate from the Pope. Performing them without that authorization created a serious canonical problem. The event left a visible wound within the Church. Yet even this moment was not a sudden rupture. It was the result of a gradual process that had been building for years. The disagreement at the heart of the conflict was not merely about rules or discipline. It was about theology and interpretation. The central question concerned how the teachings of the Second Vatican Council should be understood. Some argued that the Council marked a break with earlier traditions, a new direction that required significant changes in pastoral practice and theology. Others insisted that the Council must be interpreted in continuity with the Church's historical teachings. According to this view, the Council did not overturn the past but developed it within the same framework of belief. Pope Benedict XVI later addressed this issue directly when he spoke about what he called the hermeneutic of continuity. He argued that the Council should be understood as part of the Church's ongoing tradition rather than as a rupture with it. During his pontificate, he tried to clarify how the reforms of the Council could be integrated without abandoning the continuity of Catholic doctrine. St. John Paul II had already taken steps in this direction earlier. Throughout his pontificate he intervened several times to correct what he believed were abuses or misunderstandings in liturgical practice and pastoral life. His intention was not to reject the council but to ensure that it was interpreted correctly in light of the Church's long tradition. Today, however, the same questions have returned with renewed urgency. The superior of the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X has indicated that he may proceed with new episcopal consecrations without papal approval. According to canon law, such actions carry automatic consequences. If they take place, they would represent another major escalation in a conflict that has remained unresolved for decades. Faced with this possibility, the Vatican has chosen to pursue dialogue. A meeting took place at the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. Officials described the discussion as cordial and constructive. The goal of the conversation was not to demand total agreement on every development that followed the Council. Instead, the Vatican proposed focusing on what it considers the essential elements of the Council's teaching. The formula offered in the official statement was precise. The idea was to reach an agreement that acknowledges the core principles of the Second Vatican Council while leaving room for discussion about other aspects that developed afterward. In return, the possibility of granting the fraternity a stable legal status within the Church has been considered. Details of such an arrangement have not been made public. Nevertheless, the fact that the proposal exists shows that the Vatican is attempting to find a path toward reconciliation. After the meeting, the superior of the fraternity acknowledged that the atmosphere had been respectful. At the same time, he made it clear that reaching even a minimum agreement would not be easy. The final decision will not depend on one individual alone but on the internal governing bodies of the fraternity. For the moment, the possibility of new episcopal consecrations remains suspended. If they were to take place, they would mark a serious turning point. The Church would once again face the prospect of a formal rupture similar to the one that occurred in 1988. Yet this visible conflict is only one side of the current situation. Another tension has developed in a different part of the Church, less dramatic in appearance but potentially just as significant. This second front is found in Germany. In recent years, a process of discussion and consultation known as the Synodal path has taken place there. It brought together bishops and lay representatives to examine questions about authority, morality, and the future direction of the Church. The process produced a series of documents and proposals. Some of these have been implemented locally, while others still await evaluation by the Vatican. Pope Leo XIV has already begun to address this situation. He recently received Cardinal Gerhard Müller in a private audience. Müller previously served as prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and is deeply familiar with the theological debates in Germany. Additional meetings with representatives of the German episcopate are expected. But the issue cannot be understood solely through official meetings in Rome. It is also visible in the daily life of parishes. Reports from Frankfurt provide an example of how the conclusions of the synodal path are being presented to ordinary parish communities. In one parish presentation, it was stated that sexual orientation is inherent to the person as created by God. The same presentation suggested that a stable relationship between people of the same sex should not automatically be considered sinful. These statements were included in materials shared with the faithful. For some Catholics, hearing such statements created confusion. One parishioner openly asked whether it was appropriate to continue attending a community where the teaching seemed different from what she had previously learned. Her question was not framed as a protest or accusation. It reflected a practical concern about how local catechesis relates to the universal teaching authority of the Church. Other examples show how practices are beginning to diverge even between neighboring communities. In Bavaria, two towns separated by a single road have adopted different approaches to preparing children for their first communion. In one parish, the council decided that children should not receive the sacrament of confession beforehand. In the parish across the road, confession continues to be offered regularly as part of the preparation. Stories like these reveal a change in the internal dynamics of parish life. Some priests say they feel constrained in their pastoral decisions, while lay councils are exercising greater influence over parish policies. None of these accounts alone constitutes a dramatic break with the Church. But taken together, they suggest that a gradual shift may be underway. What emerges is not an open schism but a slow transformation in the way Catholic communities operate. Different regions begin to develop different practices and priorities. The language used to describe moral teachings changes from one place to another. Over time, this creates a pattern of divergence that does not always involve formal declarations or official separation. This situation presents Pope Leo XIV with a complex challenge. On one side lies the possibility of a formal rupture if the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X proceeds with unauthorized episcopal consecrations. On the other side lies the quieter but persistent development of differing pastoral approaches in places like Germany. The Pope must address both realities at the same time. Avoiding a new institutional break is important because the division created in 1988 never fully healed. Yet preserving unity also requires attention to doctrinal clarity and sacramental practice. If local communities begin to move in different directions without a shared framework, the sense of belonging to one universal church can gradually weaken. The issue is not simply about choosing between firmness and openness. It concerns the fundamental identity of the Church. Catholicism does not see itself as a federation of independent communities that can each define their own doctrine. Instead, it understands itself as a communion united by the same faith, the same sacramental structure, and the same body of teaching. This is why the question of how to interpret the Second Vatican Council remains so important. The hermeneutic of continuity, once described by Benedict XVI, is not just a theoretical concept discussed by theologians. It is meant to serve as a guiding principle that keeps the Council from becoming a permanent source of conflict. Two risks now stand before the Church. One is the possibility of an explicit split, a clear break that would be visible to everyone. The other is a quieter form of fragmentation in which different regions gradually adopt their own interpretations and practices without ever formally declaring separation. Determining which of these dangers is more serious is not easy. History shows that crises within the Church rarely disappear through ambiguous compromises. They tend to be resolved only when clarity about doctrine is combined with patience and charity in pastoral practice. Pope Leo XIV has inherited a complicated legacy. The decisions that must be made in the coming months will shape the direction of the Church for years. They will not simply be bureaucratic adjustments. They will involve choices about how the Church understands its own continuity with the past while addressing the realities of the present. The current moment is the result of a long journey marked by differing interpretations, attempts at correction, and tensions that were never fully settled. Those unresolved questions have slowly accumulated, leading to the situation now confronting the Church. Today the outline of the problem is clear. Two different fronts of tension have emerged, yet both ultimately require the same responsibility of leadership. The central question remains open. Can unity be restored in a way that remains faithful to the Church's tradition while avoiding both a dramatic rupture and a slow dissolution of common identity? The answer will depend on more than diplomatic negotiation. It will involve the ability to teach clearly, to preserve continuity with tradition, and to govern with the courage needed to make difficult decisions. This is where the Church now stands. The circumstances did not arise by accident. They are the outcome of a long historical process. And as the coming months unfold, the moment for decisive choices is drawing closer. If this message touched your heart, like this video and share your thoughts in the comment Amen and stay with us. More Eucharistic stories, deeper reflections, and holy insights are on the way. May Christ in the Eucharist be your light, your rest, your truth. Amen.